The Republican-controlled Ohio Supreme Court is being asked to reject a sinister move by the GOP stronghold in the Ohio General Assembly to undermine the one-person, one-vote principle that underpins our American democracy. Lawsuits filed by One Person, One Vote, one of the many groups opposed to an August special election set up last week by Republicans in the House and Senate, contends that legislators violated a law that went into effect in January banning special elections in August. A second lawsuit filed by One Person, One Vote challenges the language adopted by the Ohio Ballot Board pertaining to the August ballot issue. The reason for the GOP's push to place before the voters the issue of raising the bar to amend Ohio's Constitution from a simple majority vote to 60% reveals the cynicism of the Republicans. They want to make it much more difficult to enshrine abortion rights in Ohio's Constitution. The issue to make reproductive rights an amendment to the Constitution is expected to be on the November general election ballot. Republicans' obsession to deprive a woman of her right to choose what to do with her body has roiled the political waters in Ohio. I'm Cynthia Rickard, host of today's Scribbler video podcast streamed on YouTube, Facebook, WFMJ.com, and other digital platforms. My co-host, Bertram de Souza, and I have dedicated several podcasts to the GOP's attack on women. Today, we are joined by Dennis Willard, a veteran journalist who is now spokesman for one of the groups fighting the August special election, and Dr. Alexis Smith and Dave Greger, who are in the forefront of the petition campaign to place the reproductive health issue on the November ballot. Well, we're happy to have you both here today. I'd like for each of you to introduce yourselves and give a little explanation of what your positions are. Dennis, you want to start?
Sure. My name is Dennis Willard, and I'm the spokesperson for One Person, One Vote. We're the campaign that is pushing for a no vote on issue 1 in August, on August 8th. We oppose issue 1 because we believe that it undermines the sacred principle of one person, one vote, and would end majority rule in Ohio for constitutional amendments by raising the threshold to 60% for passage.
Hey, Dennis, tell us a little about your background, since Cindy and I both know you.
Sure. Yeah, I had the privilege to start my journalism career as a stringer for the Youngstown Vindicator way back in the day at the Ohio State House in 1987. I was a reporter for 23 years at the State House. The last 15, I was the bureau chief for the Akron Beacon Journal. And then in 2010, I got out of reporting and started a company, Precision New Media. And I've worked on a number of statewide ballot issues. I worked for Democratic candidates primarily, caucuses, work with nonprofits, and in the progressive arena primarily. And I was the communications director in 2011 for the vote against Senate Bill 5. That was the anti-collective bargaining bill that we had voters basically veto and restore collective bargaining rights for public sector employees in Ohio.
Dave?
Yeah, so again, my name is Dave Greger, and my position is I'm the regional organizer for Eastern Ohio for Protect Choice Ohio. Protect Choice Ohio, along with Ohioans for Reproductive Freedom, are the two main organizations that are in charge of the ballot drive to get a reproductive freedom amendment on the ballot in November. In my region has about 12 counties, so I go up to the lake with Lake and Ashtabula and down the eastern side down to Belmont County. I have a lot of experience on political campaigns going back to 2010, working in here in Northeast Ohio, some in Southeast Ohio, and a little in West Virginia. I'm also currently a consultant for a upstart political consulting company called Blue Phoenix Strategies. I'm a Valley native, graduating from Boardman High School, and
your company's based in Youngstown, is it?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So basically, the petition drive is to get an amendment into the state constitution to protect women's choice in their health care decisions.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And this amendment, it's going to ensure that Ohioans have access to safe, legal, and comprehensive reproductive medical care, including abortion. We feel that the overturn of Roe and Ohio's adoption of a near total ban plunged Ohio into a medical crisis that put lives, health, safety, bodily autonomy at risk. So we feel it's vital to restore and protect reproductive freedom by getting this amendment passed.
Well, thank you. Like Cindy said, we appreciate you joining us. We have spent quite a bit of time on this issue and will continue to do so using this podcast. Dennis, let me start with you. Your group has filed 2 lawsuits in the Ohio Supreme Court relating to the August special election that the Republicans are ramming through. The first one actually challenges the election, the special election itself, and the other one that you put out a release today actually challenges the ballot language. So speak to that, because I think people need to clearly understand what's going on here.
Yes, let's go to the first one first, Bertram. The special election in August for special interests, we believe, is illegal. 5 months ago, the legislature passed a law that banned special elections in August because they said they were a waste of taxpayer dollars and that voter turnout was so low that a few number of people were making important decisions. Frank LaRose, the Secretary of State, and
Right.
Brian Stewart, both proponents of the resolution to raise the threshold to 60%, were very vocal in support of doing away with special elections in August. But the legislature was unable to muster the votes to change their own law, to amend their own law, which they have the power to do, to create the special election in August. And so they inserted it into the resolution to put this on the ballot. Well, we think that that's illegal. The law right now says that elections can be held in March, May, and November.
Right.
So we've gone to the Supreme Court and we've asked the court to just take a look at the law and say that the lawmakers are breaking their own law right now. And we're hoping the Supreme Court will agree with us and toss out this special election in August. That's the first lawsuit we filed. The second one that we filed challenges the language of the Ohio Ballot Board. Very quickly, the Ballot Board has a responsibility to put together language so that when you walk into the voting booth or you get your absentee ballot and you read what an issue does, you should be able to really read that without having any prior knowledge of that issue and have a clear understanding of the consequences of that. And that's their responsibility.
Meaning the consequences of what your vote is, yes or no.
That's right, yes. So for example, in this case, if you are voting to do away with a right and a power that you've had for 111 years, that a simple majority, 50+1, would change the Constitution, and that is being raised to 60%, then the voters should know that. They should know that they're changing a power they've had and a right they've had for 111 years. The ballot board language does not make that clear. The ballot board language is written to try to, once again, put the thumb on the scale of the proponents who are pushing this idea. We're challenging that language. We're asking the Ohio Supreme Court to order the ballot board to go back, reconvene, and get the language right. All we're asking for it to be is a fair rendition of what this issue is. But right now, it's really it would misinform voters who read it, and we're going to challenge that.
Can you say what the language is in general? I don't expect you to quote it verbatim, but
It basically, one of the words they use, for example, is to elevate, as if they're somehow empowering voters to protect the Constitution. Because keep in mind, their whole approach has been to say that they're going to keep special interests out of our constitutional process. Well, that is so hypocritical because a billionaire from out of state is sponsoring this, and they're actually trying. This is a special interest election for special interests, and so the word elevate itself is a problem. And when Frank LaRose was asked why he used the word elevate, which is a sort of a loaded word, uh, he said, well, if you go to the thesaurus, the first definition of elevate is to increase, and we would have no problem with the word increase
Yeah.
if you're
Right.
increasing it. But that's kind of the trickery that they're doing. So, but there's other things too. They are flat out wrong in a couple of areas. For example, and I don't want to get too technical here, but they are increasing the number of signatures that have to be collected across the state, making it impossible or nearly impossible for Ohioans to amend their own constitution. But they've even got that wrong because in the resolution it says 5% of the voters in each county, of the number of voters that voted in each county in the past gubernatorial election. But in the ballot language, they say 5% of the registered voters. So those things are in conflict. So they didn't do their homework. They did a poor job of wording it, and it's really problematic for voters. And voters should be upset about this.
What's the 5%? What issue is that included in?
That's in the resolution. And so right now, if you want to go to if voters want to go to the ballot and put an issue on the ballot before voters in Ohio, they have to collect signatures in 44 counties. They have to collect a certain number of signatures, and they have to collect a certain number of signatures in 44 of the 88 counties. And that number is 5% that voted in the most recent gubernatorial election. This resolution makes it even more onerous. It makes it even more onerous for voters by spreading it to 88 counties.
Wow.
5%. So they're making it impossible or nearly impossible for Ohioans to amend their own constitution.
Hey, and Dave, let me ask you this. We don't know how the Ohio Supreme Court is going to rule on these two lawsuits, but it is instructive that the majority of the court is Republican. And so, while we assume that justices look only at the law and are objective, that is an assumption recently we cannot make any longer. So from your vantage point, if there is an August special election to raise the threshold from 50+1 to 60, it will directly affect the November ballot issue. So to what extent is your group and other groups getting involved, first of all, in the August election to try and educate voters as to what the Republicans are trying to pull here?
Yeah, so I think that the first thing that we want to stress is that we remain laser focused on continuing to collect signatures. We know that either way, we have a high goal of number of signatures that we need to reach and a deadline of early July to get those ready submitted to the Ohio Secretary of State's office. We will certainly keep fighting to preserve and protect the sanctity of the doctor-patient relationship and be involved in the August and election and win the August election if our suspicions are right and that election happens and certainly in November. And certainly we know this attack on our democracy is really just intended to do one thing, to make it more difficult for us to pass this amendment. And we feel that the extremists know that a solid majority of Ohioans support our amendment. So again, I think just to circle back, we remain laser focused on our signature goals on hand, and
So,
from there, depending on what happens, if there's an election in August, we will be involved.
so are you all focused on gathering signatures in all 88 counties with the 5%, assuming that the August issue passes? Is that what you are doing?
So, we are getting signatures from many different parts of the state. We have more than 2,000 volunteers that are working across the state to collect signatures between ourselves, our partner organizations, coalition members, and paid signature gatherers that are out throughout the state. So we're in every corner of the state that we can be in, and we just view it's all hands on deck, and we're everywhere, and we're seeing a lot of energy around this, and not just Democrats. We've seen Republicans out in the field that feel that that this is a step too far, some overreach. So we like the response that we've been getting, and we're just laser focused.
Yeah, just one clarification with Dennis. If the August issue passes, would Protect Choice Ohio be required to get signatures in all 88 counties in order to
Not
place
if they
the
turn
issue?
it, not if they turn in before, if they turn in time to be on the November ballot, then they have to turn in by early July. So this would not affect the signature collection for that particular campaign.
All
For
right.
future campaigns, it would, if it would pass in August. What it would do would raise the threshold for passage in November to 60+1 instead of 50+1.
Okay. Dave, I was at one of the organization meetings, and I'd like you to tell our viewers how, if they want to get involved, volunteering, collecting signatures, or doing whatever else you need, can you give us a rundown of who they can call, where they can go?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a number of different options. The first thing I want to make sure to let folks know is to go to protectchoiceohio.com. On that website, not only can you sign up to volunteer, you can look at the ballot language, for example, if to see exactly what will appear, and some other information as well. We have a great local organization, Steel Valley Reproductive Freedom, that I would encourage folks to check out on Facebook as well, that has been a great partner locally for helping us with different signature gathering events. And folks can email me.
I just got an email from them in the last day or so.
Oh, perfect. And then I'll just give my email now. I would encourage anyone interested to email me directly as well. It's dave@protectchoiceohio.com. And again, if we need everyone's help on this, and even if you may know, a few friends or 10 friends that are wanting to sign the petition, let me know. We'll get a petition to you and get this started. Folks can sign our petition Monday through Friday at Penguin City Brewery at our office location. We have an office space that's attached to the brewery. Basically normal business hours, 10 to 4. And we're doing many other events as well. So another option, we post a lot of the events that we will have a presence at mobilize.us. So if you are curious about events here or throughout the state, that would be a great tool to use as well. So a lot of options, and I encourage folks to use the one that they feel most comfortable with.
Yeah.
Dennis, you mentioned the Secretary of State, LaRose. During his testimony, when the legislature was considering the bill to eliminate the August special elections and only have special elections in March, to have special elections in March, May, or November, he had a lot of testimony about not only the waste of money, but the turnout in August. And it is, and having covered politics for as perhaps as long as I have in Ohio, that special interests do use the August special election because they know the turnout is very low. The dog days of summer, people are, on vacation, they're out of the state, they're all this like
At the
this.
beach.
Yeah, and the question then arises is, how did the Secretary of State sort of respond when he was challenged with his actual testimony, and now he has taken this position about pushing for a special August election? And is that part of the lawsuit that you'll have filed in the Supreme Court, alluding to his change in positions?
I'm not sure that we have put any of that into the specific lawsuit, but it's absolutely part of the public discussion. I mean, Frank LaRose has flip-flopped on this issue because he's being pressured by special interest groups to do so. He really has not been able to provide a good excuse for suddenly having a change of heart because the facts remain the same. It is a waste of taxpayer dollars. We're estimating that it's going to be $20 million or more, probably more. The Ohio Association of County Boards of Elections, this is the group of 88 counties that have to put these local elections together, have all come out in opposition to this because they're busy preparing for the November election. They're busy with candidates running for office. And this is a huge burden on them at a time when it's very difficult for them to find workers in the first place. So Frank LaRose has no excuse, but also Frank LaRose, as more and more people are growing to learn, will say anything to appeal to the people who fund him and who tell him what to do as Secretary of State. So I think that, it's just, by the way, Brian Stewart, the main sponsor of the resolution to put this on the ballot and then the House, once said that it was his career goal as an elected lawmaker to do away with special elections in August. So I mean, these people are just full of hypocrisy because they're pursuing an ideological path here rather than, what is best for our state.
Right.
And what is best for our democracy. And it's unfortunate, but going to David's point about enthusiasm, we had hundreds of people show up in the middle of the day on 2 consecutive Wednesdays to protest this effort to pass this. We know that there's enthusiasm all across the state to stand up against these bullies. We have a coalition of 240 organizations representing millions of voters in Ohio. So what we're saying is we're going to engage, enrage, register, and turn them out on August 8th to vote no against State Issue 1.
And Dennis, I need to point out, as you had said, the major funder, the person funding this effort, is an out-of-state person.
Who is this?
Which is what the Republicans argued they wanted to stop.
Yeah.
By doing that. Who is this? Who is this individual? Tell us about him.
I don't know that much about him. His name is Richard Uline. He is I think his family owned one of the major breweries in America, and he now has this like magazine Uline, sort of a play on his name that it's like an online catalog, but he is a billionaire. and he is funding this.
Where's he
Uh,
from?
he's from Illinois.
Illinois.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I just to give you a context here. So listen, if it wasn't so serious, it would be comical.
Yeah.
But
Great
I'll tell
follow
you,
for a columnist.
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. Because there are so many, there's so many holes to poke into their ideas. But let me just give you one example. When they had sponsor testimony in the lame duck session of 22 on this very issue, they had one person show up as a proponent. And that person was talking about out-of-state interests taking over our Constitution. And one of the lawmakers on the panel said, "Aren't you from out of state? And don't you represent an out-of-state interest?" And the person had to admit that they were born in Ohio, but they now work for this out-of-state interest. That was in lame duck. But let's go to most recently. When they brought in proponent testimony, they had 8 people representing 9 organizations testify in favor of this. All of those organizations were extreme conservative organizations that are out of touch with everyday Ohioans. We had 179 organizations and individuals submit written testimony at least 24 hours in advance, representing a wide swath of Ohioans and organizations. They allowed 6 of our people to testify before it got too heated, and we started to show and demonstrate just how much support there is against, or opposition there is against this, and they cut off testimony, called the vote, and went to lunch. 6 out of 179.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
Alexis.
Hi, Dr.
Hi.
Smith. I'm Bertram de Souza.
I'm Cynthia. I think I met you at one meeting that we had.
Oh, yes.
Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
We're taking just a short break so that you can join in. And what we did at the start was have Dave and Dennis give sort of an explanation, brief explanation of their positions with this whole issue.
And Dave, you know Dave, right, Alexis?
Oh, yes.
And Dennis Willard is with One Person, One Vote, the organization that is challenging the August ballot issue in the Supreme Court. Dennis and I and
wonderful.
Cindy have known each other for many, many years. He's a former journalist as well, and he used to cover the State House for the Vindicator in Columbus.
Oh,
So
very
we've
cool.
known him a long time. So if you would introduce yourself and tell us a little about yourself, and then we'll go back to the discussion.
Are you ready, Andy?
Go ahead.
Okay. Hi,
All right,
Alexis.
I'm Dr. Alexis Smith. I'm a physician, a radiologist who lives and works in Youngstown, Ohio. I'm a member of Ohio Physicians for Reproductive Rights, and I'm also on the executive committee for the Steel Valley Reproductive Freedom Coalition.
Okay. And before you joined in, I asked Dennis a question pointing to Republican hypocrisy on not only the August election, but
Yes.
also on the November issue. And Dennis, the most glaring hypocrisy I see is that the issue in August that would raise the threshold to 60% in order to amend the Constitution only need pass by a simple majority, right?
Right?
Am I right
That's
in
right.
that?
Right. In fact, they're asking voters in Ohio, and we don't believe that voters, we think voters will see through this. They, I think, believe voters are stupid, but we think voters will see through this very clearly. They're asking voters with a 50+1 majority to vote so they have less power.
Yeah.
It would take 60%, which really means giving 40% of Ohioans the ability to block what the people want in Ohio. And the only reason we go to a constitutional amendment is because the legislature and the governor are ignoring the will of the people or acting in defiance of the will of the people.
Yeah.
And you see that on so many issues. But the voters have been very discerning over the years in passing constitutional amendments. It's not like they do it willy-nilly. They have serious thought and retrospection about this, and then they vote. And only 1 out of 4 constitutional amendments put forth by voters in the past 111 years have passed. So that means 3 out of 4 have failed. So this is something but we should hold on to that power of a simple majority. And that's what this does. It would destroy majority rule in passing constitutional amendments. It would make it impossible or nearly impossible for Ohioans to change their own constitution.
So Cindy, you want to ask Dr.
Yeah, well, before I get to you, Alexis, I just wanted to ask Dave two things. How's the petition drive coming? What's the reaction that you're getting from most people that are being contacted? And secondly, as I said earlier, I did get an email about participating in petition or signature collection at the East Palestine Street Fair. And I wonder if you could just give an idea of some of the other events that people who want to participate can participate in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the first thing is we are on track to hit our goals for the number of signatures that we need throughout the state. And again,
has there been has there been any sort of animosity or violence or any kind of threats against petition collectors or signature collectors?
There have been a handful throughout the state of what I would call just disruptors. So the occasional people that at a petition signing will try to talk someone out of signing or try to provide false information about what is actually on the ballot. But we have trained our volunteers to how to handle those incidences, and they're very rare. So we've had we think we've had vast majority of positive experiences out in the community. And then as far as other events, we try to be at every small or major event that's going on throughout Ohio. A couple of examples. There have been a couple of art festivals or various farmers markets that we've had a presence in. With June around the corner, we will have a lot of people registering or voters, as well as getting people to sign the petition for Pride events. June is a big month for Pride events. So again, yeah.
And the deadline is July 5th, right? For the final deadline for collecting the signatures.
So yeah, the deadline to turn in our signatures to the Secretary of State is July 5th. We are basically, we'll have a deadline like a week or two before then, just to kind of gather all of the petitions and organize them to turn in, basically. So
yeah, we're stopping our events on June 17th.
Oh, okay.
I've been helping Dave coordinate events because Steel Valley is a large group of volunteers in the Mahoning County that are working on this with Dave and Protect Choice Ohio. And so I just was actually setting up the list of events today and sending them to
were you?
Amanda. Yes.
Can you give those to us?
Any festival that's out there, from the Simply Slavic to any of the prides, the flea markets that are around, any kind of other market that's going on, or art events like Dave was saying. But definitely the festivals are big places. I worked on the gerrymandering ballot initiative some years ago with the League of Women Voters, and those we kind of knew from doing that those were big hit places, where we could get a lot of people and kind of the least amount of resistance, but Dave coordinates all this, and we're the volunteers that work with him.
Alexis, you're a medical professional, you're a doctor. What has prompted you to get involved in this issue? What's driving you?
A couple reasons. First was my own personal experience with these issues. had a profound effect on me and my
could you
ability.
elaborate? Could you share your personal story?
Sure. So, when I was in medical school, I became pregnant. I had had issues with birth control as side effects. And I was in Philadelphia, and my partner at the time had kind of run off to find himself. And I was out there living alone. I'm from around in Newcastle, PA. And I had the choice, really. It was either to kind of pack up shop and go home and have a child, or to continue on with my degree and live my dream and have an abortion. And I chose to have an abortion. And it was very difficult to walk through the crowd of people, calling you names and things for a decision that was not easy to make. It was not an easy procedure to go through. But I'm happy that I made the decision. I was able to carry out my dream to help people, save lives. I also, if I would have gone home, would have bankrupted my parents, who had signed for my $250,000 in school loans, which they could not have afforded to pay back. So for me, it was very, it's become a personal decision. Then I've subsequently had miscarriages, and I've also given birth, and I have a child who I adore. Dave knows him. And I just think this is so pertinent to a woman's freedom and her ability to set her life up, and to live the life that she wants or needs to have. She needs to have this ability and this say in her life. But I also think it's a health thing also. Women are just flat out going to die. I mean, that's the truth. And as physicians, I don't think we can stand by and allow that to happen without saying something.
Alexis, I've been mulling this over for years, but I mean, recently, I'm just wondering if it's even legal for politicians who are not medical professionals to make these medical decisions. Are there any, and any of you can weigh in, are there any laws that would prevent that? Because it seems to me that if a woman dies or a child is born with disabilities, and they have passed this law to say that you can't have an abortion, the state should be responsible for their health care of that person and that family for their lifetimes. And I don't know.
Well, that's the question, right? I mean, there's going to be consequences to these things. Not just those situations. Like you said, the mother could have long-term side effects or could pass away. Giving birth is not a benign thing like we think it is in this country. It is a life-risking event. You're taking your life in your hands, and so what these politicians are saying is that I can make life and death decisions for other people, but I can't make them for my own self.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's the question. I think, you're hearing about these lawsuits that are coming up about women who've had now issues with their birth, and they're going to start filing against these bans because, yeah, who's going to help them and what's going to happen? The other question is, how are you going to recruit physicians to these states?
Yeah, have you seen
because people don't want to work in them.
Well, we talked about that in some previous podcasts. Have you seen any effects and changes in your profession? Are your colleagues staying away from Ohio, refusing to come here? What's the situation right now?
Well, you have to understand that after the pandemic, I mean, a lot of people have already run out of healthcare. The people who could retired. A lot of people burned out because it was a very difficult time in healthcare. So we were already at a short supply of people in healthcare. Our generation is smaller than the generation before it. So we already knew we were going to be in short supply of healthcare workers to take care of the baby boomers. So as the baby boomers retire, we are very, very short supply right now, and there just aren't enough of us to go around to begin with. So if you're weighing out your options, if you can get a better offer somewhere where they're going to allow you to practice fully without being scared that you're going to be imprisoned, lose your license, be fined, or whatever else, be charged with a felony, for goodness sakes, you're going to go there.
And there are fewer and fewer safe states to go to.
Yeah. That is true.
Dennis, with your experience covering politicians in Columbus, and to Cindy's question and to Alexis's response about politicians making decisions about women's health care, what do they say to you, to other reporters, or even what do they say when they try to justify their, wanting to ban abortions and, taking away a woman's right to choose what to do with her own body? How do they explain this? And by the way, they're mostly white men, by the way. That's a given as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so let me just say, I was a reporter for 23 years, and I got out of reporting in large part because I saw this new strain of extremist politicians coming into the legislature, and I had a harder and harder time being objective covering them. I would be taking notes in my notebook, Bertram, and actually I could feel my blood and body temperature.
Your heart rate going up?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like I was getting angry at them because they, and like let's think about this, for example. They passed a bill to basically ban abortions in Ohio with a 50+1 vote. And they don't want the people of Ohio to be able to overturn that idea with a 50+1 vote. They want to raise the threshold to 60+1 because they're always putting their thumb on the scale and rigging the system. So I think that we have extreme gerrymandered districts.
Yeah.
So we have a legislature that is out of touch, ideological, with the voting and the populace in Ohio. And I think in this case, we should be able to go, but not only on this issue, but on every issue, we should be able to go directly to the voters when we think the legislature is ignoring our will, go directly to the voters with a simple 50+1 majority vote and ask the voters what they think. And if the voters agree with us, then say yes. And if they don't, say no. And so I think that's important because what we're fighting for in August goes well beyond the reproductive rights issue in November. It's fundamental, it's foundational for our democracy.
Yeah.
And so if we want to be able to ask voters what they think about fair wages, living wages, affordable housing, if we want to go to the voters and ask them to extend the bond limit for the state to invest in infrastructure, it should be a 50+1 vote. We have built school buildings, roads, bike paths, waterways, recreational facilities, so much because we've asked voters to invest into those projects. And right now, that there's a huge investment going on in the Mahoning Valley in electric vehicles, et cetera, the future of manufacturing. And if the state wants to invest in that and needs to extend its bond limit to do that, they should be able to do that with a 50+1. We shouldn't let 40% of the people, a small number of the people, block things. And that's what this is. And by the way, that's why they know that they don't represent the vast majority of Ohioans. They're out of touch, and they're so afraid of voters. They're so afraid of democracy. They stand up, they wave flags, and they're frightened by democracy.
It is noteworthy that former Republican governors have come out against this because those were the governors who went to the people, to the ballot issues, seeking third frontier money, for example, that aided areas like the Mahoning Valley greatly.
Right.
And so, but yet this extreme wing of the Republican Party has taken over the state with some success. And Dave, that's my question to you is, when you go around and when you and your colleagues go around for the petition drive to get signatures, do people actually understand the ramifications of what's being done here?
I don't believe they do, and that's why it's very important that we have a strong presence throughout the state. We're proud of everywhere that we've shown up at, and we feel like when we explain what the issue is, what the initiative is that we are fighting on, then I think there's a realization of overreach that has gotten some Republican support from us. There's certainly those that are more religious that won't ever come on board. But I think when they hear, I'll give an example. I was out getting signatures about a week ago, and someone had no idea that Ohio had a 6-week ban, and they, I think, even reminding folks of what is currently happening is very important as well before we go into this ballot measure. So we view this, certainly we're laser focused on the signatures, but I think we recognize there's a little bit of education that's involved here, but once folks know what the measure is, we've gotten mostly positive response.
I'd like to read a part of, I'm sure you all are aware of Ruth Marcus, the exceptional columnist for the Washington Post, and I know Dennis is aware of her. And she has been very, very outspoken on a lot of these issues. Her latest column it talks about baby Milo in Florida. And she starts off by saying, baby Milo's grandfather thought he might have hiccups. Instead, the newborn was gasping for air. Born without kidneys, his lungs underdeveloped, Milo Evan Dorbert lived for 99 minutes. The cause of death was Powder syndrome, discovered of 23 weeks of pregnancy. The cause of unnecessary suffering for Milo and his family was a Florida law that doctors said prevented them from terminating the pregnancy, even though it was clear the condition would be fatal. And here's a quote from the baby's grandfather. Quote, "To me, it's just plain torture. The law has created torture." Dr. Smith, could you explain to us what this newborn went through? What does it mean to be born without kidneys and with underdeveloped lungs? And is it torture?
Oh, for certain, yes. To be born like that, you will feel like you are drowning or gasping for air as if you're having a severe asthma attack, and you cannot catch your breath until the point of passing. There's going to be a real struggle for both the parent and the child. The mother, in fact, too, is at risk, because as she carries that fetus to term, there's even more risks if the fetus passes, and then she can develop things like sepsis and pass away as well if they're leaving the fetus inside of her. I've heard of many cases of this happening recently, where again, because the physicians are afraid to practice, so what they do is they end up putting this issue in front of almost like a board at a hospital, and the board has to decide that it's okay to go ahead with the termination. So a lot of the fetuses that are abnormal, they may be missing a brain, they may be missing kidneys, they may be missing lung. There's all kinds of things that can be abnormal, and we know they will not live past a few minutes past birth, and they will suffer because they will feel essentially tortured, as if any of us would, if we felt like we were drowning or having a severe asthma attack. And they will just leave that fetus inside the mother because the heart is still beating. And by the law, they can't remove the fetus until that time. So that the fetus can be completely incompatible with life, missing a brain or other organs that we know it cannot survive with. But because this thing we call the heart in there that's developing is still beating, they've left the fetus in the mother, and then the mother has subsequently developed sepsis. I was just reading a case about a woman who said she was vomiting. She vomited about 20 times. She had severe shaking uncontrollably for 12 to 15 hours
Oh
and was
God.
on the brink of death before they finally said that they could go ahead with the termination. So she was brought to the brink of death, and I promise you, women are going to die
Yeah.
because sometimes you're going to go past that limit. We don't know, we don't have that way of knowing, oh, it's too late now. We've let it go too long. And these children that are born are going to suffer horribly because again, it is like you're drowning or you're suffocating
So,
or you're being suffocated.
so baby Milo for 99 minutes actually felt pain and actually was
Yes.
was in a state of despair and terror.
They would be turning blue, becoming limp, anything that you could see with asphyxiation, just as if somebody was strangling you.
Oh boy.
Anything that cuts off your air, whether it be from outside or inside. If your lungs aren't developed well enough to take in the air to oxygenate your blood, it doesn't matter whether it's your lungs or, somebody's manually putting pressure on you. So yeah, it's torture, really.
So I know that there's a group of physicians who have organized to fight these laws. I don't know if are you part of that, or do you know what the latest move that they've made towards trying to fight these draconian
Yes.
laws?
Well, in Ohio, I'm involved with the Ohio Physicians for Reproductive Rights. Actually, Michelle Lepore Hagan was the one who turned me on to them. She was in the state house still when the Dobbs decision came down last year. And we had organized Steel Valley Reproductive Freedom Coalition, and she knew that we were working. And she kept getting in my ear saying, Dr. Smith, you got to join this group. And I didn't know that this was coming with the initiative. And so I joined and found out that they were starting this initiative. And then Dave and Blue Phoenix Strategies got added on to the group. And we all joined into this coalition that's called Protect Choice Ohio. What the Ohio Physicians for Reproductive Rights found was when they did the research for this initiative, the reason it's worded the way it is because they found that it did well with voters, the way it was worded. People agreed with that wording. They also found that the message was best when it came from physicians, that we are still considered nonpartisan, to much of a degree as you can be in these days. And so they found through their research that this was the best way to go. So we started pushing forward with doing the initiative this year with this wording. And then it all just kind of snowballed from there. And we're just moving along now.
Well-
It's been wonderful, honestly, to see some action.
Yeah.
Dennis, when there has been lots of testimony, for the heartbeat bill and all these other bills that have come forward in Columbus, when legislators hear testimony like what Dr. Smith just talked about, and hear from physicians, and hear from doctors who actually issue warnings about what this is going to do, not only to the fetus but to the mother, to the health of the mother and all. It doesn't seem that it resonates with a certain segment of the legislature. What's going on? And you've been there long enough to figure it out, I guess, I hope. What's happening here?
Yeah, I think the extreme gerrymandered districts lead to extreme lawmakers being elected. In this recent battle over putting this amendment before voters in August, there was a huge push by Right to Life to arm twist lawmakers into voting for this, even though they didn't want to. Let's face it, they tried to pass this in lame duck, it failed. They tried to get it on the May ballot by February 1st, it failed.
Right.
They went to the 11th hour on May 10th, and there was a arm twisting going on by Right to Life. And the reason for that was that Right to Life threatened to primary them. See, if they lose their primary, they're out of office. So they said, what we're going to do? We're going to give you an F on our scorecard, and we're going to primary you in your extremely gerrymandered district. And so what we have is a legislature that is out of touch. For us, This goes way beyond just a single issue. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, there may be other issues that
Right.
are critical to voters in this state, to Ohioans. They should be able to go to the ballot, and with a simple majority of 50 plus one equals democracy,
Yeah.
we should be able to ask the voters what they believe and what they want. They're afraid of democracy. They're afraid of groups who are organizing for November. They're afraid of people who are organizing for next year. And we are not going to let them take this power, this basic fundamental right away from us. We're going to organize and get the word out. We're going to vote no in August on issue 1.
Yeah, and the abortion issue is sort of gets emotional, but there are some other major issues that are being considered, such as minimum wage. I mean, that is something that everybody could understand. So in order to pass a constitutional amendment to raise the minimum wage in Ohio, you would have to have 60%, you have to meet that 60% threshold. Which, I wonder if people know that. And Dave, perhaps you can speak to that, because I think that goes down to the heart of the kinds of people you're appealing to sign those petitions.
Yeah, we are for the last few weeks have been informing people what's going on with the August special election. And to go back a little bit, one thing that I think is very interesting is a poll was done, I want to say a couple months back, that showed about 59% support for our ballot initiative. So I think it's very interesting that
Right.
the 60% mark has been pushed here in the last couple months. So again, as I've stated earlier, we're trying to inform as many people as possible to be prepared for an August election, as well as with the petition drive. We have registered hundreds, if not thousands, of voters as well during our petition drive as well. So we've been encouraged with that. And
Dave, is there any kind of massive ad campaign being planned that would point out some of these things? For instance, that minimum wage could be at risk as well, because that actually would appeal to a wider segment of society than those who think that this is just an abortion issue.
Yeah, that's a great question. I do not know that specifically, other than I believe that the target for that would be at some point, maybe after the petition drive. So to be on the lookout for that. But as far as other specifics,
I can tell you that Steel Valley is definitely organizing to kind of do both at the same time, as far as collecting signatures and also informing people about the special election. There's a group organizing on social media against this, to vote no on the special election, and it includes organizations from all over the state.
Do you know the name of the group?
I think it's like, hold on one second. I think might be like vote no in August or something. It's very simplistic. Vote no in August. I could look it up, but yeah, it's just this group of organizations. There's a pretty long list that are coming together to educate people. But we feel like like at Steel Valley, we can do both at the same time.
Can I just ask for one more question? Something that we haven't covered is part of all these laws has put the so-called abortion drugs into the forefront. Mm-hmm. And you were talking about, the physicians that are against all of these laws, but there's also a group of physicians that have pushed this idea that mifepristone is dangerous. And I wonder if you could speak to that and explain why you think they believe that, based on the statistics, which seem to refute that.
Personally, I think that's very misguided. I personally took mifepristone It worked fine for me. It's been in use for 20 years. And it's been cleared by the FDA, and there have been studies performed on it showing good outcomes. We, don't really have bad outcomes with these medication abortions. It's also used for women who have tissue left inside them after they give birth, because again, that can cause sepsis in the mother. All that tissue that is involved with the development of the baby has to come out, and it doesn't always come out, all the placenta and things. And so sometimes it's called retained products of conception. Something gets left behind, and that can cause clotting, it can cause infection. So people will often be given that drug to induce that tissue to come out instead of having to take that patient to surgery. So again, you're causing issues with risking women's lives.
Yeah.
And it also sets a very dangerous precedent if you overrule the FDA with drugs.
Right.
Is there
Because it's
somebody
like-
backing these physicians that are against the abortion drugs?
I'm not sure exactly, because it's certainly not the majority of us. I'm not sure if they're just misguided. And, this is almost like the pandemic where, you can always find a few people who disagree with the majority and go against the science, but that doesn't mean that they're, correct. I don't know who is funding them. I mean, I could take guesses, but it's not people that I know of personally. And again, it's, it sets a very dangerous precedent for us, because then the question is, could other drugs just be willy-nilly pulled off the market?
Yeah.
Every time the FDA approves something. So then you're getting into questions of contraception and fertility treatments, and even cancer drugs that have been developed with the use of these fetal cells,
Yeah.
Right.
because they also want to go after these things.
Yeah.
So it could be a really slippery slope.
Dennis, what does your gut tell you as far as the Ohio Supreme Court? How do you think they're going to rule on these two lawsuits?
I really don't know. I'm hoping that they really look at the issue. We believe we made very strong arguments on both the reason that they should throw out the special election in August for special interests, and if they don't do that, that they should order the Ohio Ballot Board to reconvene, to write language that is fair and clear to voters, so they can make a informed decision. But I would, I don't bet on anything, and if I was going to rank things I would bet on, betting on the Ohio Supreme Court would be low on my list of things I would bet on.
So we've come to the end of the hour. It's been fascinating. I hope we can do this again. We certainly will do it after the petition drive, or even have you, Dennis, depending on when the Supreme Court rules. But if you have any final words or words of encouragement to those who are part of the campaign to undo what the extremist Republicans in Columbus are doing, please go ahead. Alexis, if you want to start and just give us some parting words, it would be great.
I would just say, please, if you can, get involved in any way and shape you can. Sign the petition, get out and vote, tell your friends, come out for the special election, come out in November to vote. We need all hands on deck right now.
Dave?
Yeah, to echo what Alexis said, we need your help. We need, folks to be invested. I would encourage you to visit protectchoiceohio.com. Go to mobilize.us to find somewhere near you to sign our petition, and check out our great partners in Steel Valley Reproductive Freedom on Facebook, and join us, please.
Dennis?
Well, I noticed that both said, dropped some credit sheets from Newcastle, and Dave from Boardman. I'm from Woodrow Wilson originally, back when I went to high school.
Wow. Wow.
And I'm a Valley guy too. I would say, I would just reiterate what they're saying is that get involved. Go to votenoinaugust.org, find out why this is such a critical issue. But the thing is, the legislature has overstepped its boundaries a number of times, and voters have stood up to them. Right now, they're acting like the bully. We need to back down the bully. The best way to back down the bully is go to the ballot box, vote what you believe in, stand up for your rights, your freedom. We can beat this in August so that we can continue to amend our constitution with a simple majority of 50+1, so that we don't let 40% of the people tell us how things are going to go in Ohio. And then we can have the debate in November on reproductive rights. And then we can also have things in the future on the ballot for voters to decide. The voters are smart. The voters know what they want and what's best for Ohio, and let's give them that opportunity, especially when the people in Columbus are so out of touch and so fighting against the will of the people of this state.
Thank you all three. It was wonderful. These are tough times for forward-thinking Ohioans, but we keep hoping, and we'll talk again. Thank you.